Have you ever felt that something in you is changing, but you can't quite explain what it is? As if you are on the threshold of something, a strange silence before the storm, or perhaps before the calm. You may not realize it yet, but certain discomforts are not signs that everything is falling apart. Sometimes they are a sign that you are finally ready to live the best phase of your life. And as an analyst of the human soul, I want to offer a different perspective on these symptoms. See, the unconscious speaks. And when it starts to stir, to send out confusing signals, when your usual routine no longer satisfies you, when relationships lose their flavor, when what you once tolerated with resignation now begins to hurt more deeply, something inside you is rebelling. And that rebellion, my friend, may be your true self knocking at the door. But the truth is that most people fear the beginning of their best phase. That's because it never starts with applause or certainties. It starts with losses, with doubts, with a certain silent discomfort, with an emptiness that was once filled with distractions and now refuses to be ignored. It starts when you stop lying to yourself. I want you to imagine this with me. You've been in a dark room for a long time. Your eyes have adjusted. You call it comfort, but it's just familiarity. Suddenly, a small crack opens and a ray of light enters. It dazzles you. It bothers you. And you want to go back to the dark. But something inside you, something much older, much deeper, whispers that it's time to leave. That, my friend, is the first sign that your soul is preparing to experience something real. But don't expect this journey to be smooth. The beginning of your best phase is almost always confused with the worst. That's because it's the moment when your ego begins to crumble, and with it, all the identities you've created to survive. The perfect child, the pleasing partner, the exemplary employee, the friend who's always available. These masks fall away. And what's left is you, naked. Raw, real, scary, isn't it? Yes, because the new only comes in when the old dies. But look, dying here is not the end. It is liberation. A caterpillar feels pain before it becomes a butterfly. The bone grows with discomfort. The uterus contracts before birth. And the soul screams before it is reborn. Maybe you're there, feeling a constant irritation with everything you used to accept in silence. People, habits, places. It's as if something inside you is saying, "This doesn't work for me anymore." That's the second sign, the disconnect, the feeling of inadequacy, the desire to disappear, not to run away from life, but to find a place where you can finally live as you are. But pay attention. This desire is not a whim. It is a psychic impulse. The ID, that deep part of the psyche that carries your most authentic desires, begins to pressure the ego. It begins to want to speak louder than the superego, that internal tyrant that imposes what is right, acceptable, moral. And when the ID begins to emerge, strange dreams, unexpected impulses, even behaviors you don't recognize arise. And you know what that means? That the truth is coming back, and the repressed is knocking at the door. The third sign is this: you start dreaming more, or you start remembering your dreams. Dreams that seem absurd, symbolic, disturbing. Don't ignore them. They are letters sent from your unconscious. And every symbol, every scene, carries a message. Dreams don't lie. They only speak in code. And if you pay attention, you will see that these dreams point you in directions that your rational ego would never dare to consider. The fourth sign is tiredness. Not physical tiredness, but an existential exhaustion. You wake up already exhausted, not because of your body, but because your soul no longer wants to pretend. You no longer fit into the version of life you have built. This is not weakness. It is maturity. It is when the ego realizes that maintaining a false identity consumes too much energy. and it begins to want to break free. And at that point, fifth sign comes in. You start saying no more often, and you start paying the price for it. People drift away. Some accuse you of selfishness. Others accuse you of coldness. But what they don't know, and you begin to discover, is that every no you say to someone else at that moment is a yes you are saying to yourself. You are, for the first time, choosing yourself. And that, for many, sounds like an affront. Yes, choosing yourself is revolutionary and painful, because you start to lose those who only liked the submissive version of you, your automatic yes, your complicit silence. But this is also where the sixth sign emerges, loneliness. But not just any loneliness. It's a different kind of loneliness. Not the loneliness of being alone, but the loneliness of being with yourself. You start seeking silence, nature, books, spaces where you can listen to yourself. You begin to realize that the best company is the one that doesn't demand performance. And that company, now, is yourself. And finally, the seventh sign, hope without reason. Amidst the chaos, fear, and pain, there is a point of light that you can't explain. A silent intuition that all of this makes sense. A strange confidence that, despite everything, you are exactly where you should be. This hope does not come from the ego. It comes from the self, from the deepest and most connected part of your psyche, which already knows where it is going, even if your consciousness does not yet understand. If you are experiencing this, know this. You are not breaking. You are being reborn. The pain you feel is the birth of your true existence. Don't try to go back. Don't try to fit where there is no longer room for who you are becoming. Your best phase will not be made of applause, but of encounters. With yourself. With what is most authentic and free within you. You feel like you can't stand repeating the same patterns anymore, right? That you can't stand sabotaging yourself, loving those who don't love you, accepting emotional crumbs, working at a job that suffocates you, pretending that everything is fine. And maybe you think, why am I so intolerant? I've always been more patient. Well, I tell you, with all the conviction an analyst can muster, that intolerance is a sign of health. It's your inner self saying, enough. What you used to call tolerance was often anesthesia, and now the effects of the anesthesia are wearing off. You begin to feel everything: pain, frustration, anger, longing, desire, emotions that were compressed under layers of convenience and survival. And this internal explosion may seem like instability, but it is a movement of truth, the return of the repressed. And as we have seen so many times in clinical practice, the repressed never returns as a memory. It returns as a symptom, as anguish, as urgency. Like a cry from the soul. At this point, many try to distract themselves. New loves, new goals, new promises. But every distraction that arises from the fear of looking at oneself is just a postponement of the pain. And I, as an analyst, propose the opposite. Stop. Listen. What is your pain trying to tell you? It doesn't want to be silenced. It wants to be understood. It is not your enemy. It is a messenger. It is telling you that something needs to die, and something needs to be born. But the birth of something new requires mourning. Mourning for the person you have been, until now. For the version of yourself that had to swallow your pride, that had to deceive your own desires, that had to smile with tears in your eyes to fit into the affections of others. And mourning hurts, because you were faithful to that version. It protected you. It did the best it could with the tools it had. But now it needs to rest. And you need to allow yourself to be something else. You see, there is no evolution without rupture. And no rupture is comfortable. That's why your best phase never begins with peace. It begins with conflict, with internal disorder. with dismantling. Because the soul, in order to grow, needs to move. And every time you ignore that movement, it gets sick. There is no such thing as meaningless illness. Every symptom is an attempt by the psyche to restore lost balance. At this moment, you may feel like you are losing control. But what you are losing is not control, it is false control. The illusion that if you please enough, you will be loved. That if you are productive enough, you will be valued. That if you are strong enough, no one will see your wounds. But the truth is that you were not born to be a machine, nor to be a showcase. You were born to be human. And to be human is to contradict yourself. It is to feel. It is to fall. It is, above all, to transform yourself. And in this process of transformation, something magical begins to happen. You begin to listen to yourself, not what the world wants to hear from you, but what your silence has to say. That voice that was, buried under layers of should, can't, isn't right. It comes back, weak at first, but insistent. It is your desire, returning from exile. Freud said that repressed desire never disappears. It transforms into anguish, into neurosis, into wrong choices repeated 1,000 times. But when you stop repressing it and start listening to it, something aligns within you, and you realize that what you called bad luck was often the unconscious repetition of the same psychic script. And now, finally, you can write a new one. But this new script only comes to life when you look back, when you revisit your childhood. Because, believe me, it all starts there. The way you love, how you give yourself, how you abandon yourself, your difficulty in saying no, your fear of rejection. All of this has its roots in the child you once were, in the child who had to repress who they were in order to be accepted, who had to be strong before they were ready, who didn't learn to protect themselves because they were too busy protecting others. That child still lives within you. And when you are about to enter your best phase, she appears, hurt, insecure, but asking for comfort. And your job now is not to silence her or ridicule her. It is to listen to her. It is to love her. It is to say to her, now I am the one who takes care of you. Because as long as that child is not seen, you will continue to seek in others the protection she did not have. You will continue to choose relationships that repeat abandonment, situations that repeat powerlessness, people who mirror contempt. But when you welcome her, something is reversed. You stop looking outside for what you lacked inside, and you begin to offer yourself what you always expected from others: respect, care, truth. And this change, so subtle, so internal, is the true beginning of your best phase. Because the real turning point doesn't happen when everything goes right. It happens when you stop betraying yourself. You no longer need to ask permission to exist or beg to be seen. From here on out, you begin to build a life that respects who you are, not who you've learned to pretend to be. And maybe you'll feel lonelier at first. But make no mistake, this loneliness is fertile. It's the pause before the harvest. It's the necessary interval between the old that dies and the new that sprouts. Life, my friend, does not reward those who pretend. It flourishes in those who have the courage to be themselves. And if you've made it this far, if you're feeling all of this, it's because the seed has already been planted. Now, the challenge is not to give up before it blooms. Even when the process is slow, even when it seems like nothing is changing. Because it is, inside, where it matters most. Have you ever realized that the biggest obstacle between you and your best phase is often unconscious loyalty to old pain? You don't sabotage yourself because you want to fail. You sabotage yourself because, somewhere in your history, you learned that being happy is dangerous. Maybe happiness was followed by abandonment. Maybe when you felt free, someone punished. You. Maybe when you truly loved, you were rejected. And so, the mind, that organ of survival, learned that approaching pleasure can be costly. And it preferred the safe zone of familiar suffering. This is a psychological trap. Pleasure is associated with danger, and displeasure with protection. That's why, sometimes, you back down just when everything seems to be going well. You end relationships that were starting to work out. You sabotage opportunities that could change your life. You put off dreams with perfect excuses. But deep down, what is at work is an unconscious fear of being happy, a fear of losing everything again soon after. And here we come to an essential point, the fear of pleasure, one of the deepest themes in psychoanalysis. In Beyond the Pleasure Principle, I explored this in depth. There is a force within us, the death drive that pulls us back to the familiar, the repetitive, the traumatic. It's as if the psyche, when it gets too close to the new, panics and triggers self-sabotage mechanisms to restore the old balance. Even if it is harmful. So don't blame yourself for not having reached your best phase yet. Maybe you're just at war with internal forces much deeper than you realize. Maybe you're trying to love while your unconscious is still stuck in the first abandonment. Maybe you're trying to be free with a mind programmed to remain captive. But here's the good news. Nothing that has been learned by the psyche is immune. To reframing, the unconscious is malleable. And every time you act differently, even if you're trembling, even if you're afraid, you're teaching your mind something new. You're saying, I can love and not be abandoned. I can enjoy myself and still be safe. I can change without losing myself. And little by little, the new stops being threatening and becomes familiar. This process, however, does not happen without resistance. The superego, that internal authority that represents all moral, cultural, and parental demands, will scream. It will call you selfish, irresponsible, ungrateful. It will try to make you feel guilty for choosing yourself. And if you are not aware of this, you will believe that you're doing something wrong just because you are allowing yourself to live. But what is wrong, in fact, is the structure that taught you to deny yourself in order to be accepted. And that is when you need the ego, your ability to negotiate with these internal forces, to sustain your decision to change, even when you hear the internal voices of fear. A mature ego is one that recognizes the impulses of the ID, listens to the demands of the superego, but acts based on reality. And the reality, at that moment, is clear. You are no longer the child who needs to be perfect in order not to be rejected. You are an adult who can choose how you want to live. And when you start living from that awareness, something changes. You start surrounding yourself with other people. People who don't demand masks, who don't demand your tamed version, who aren't scared by your intensity. People who recognize your pain and your light. And more than that, you start becoming that kind of person for yourself. This transforms everything. Because when you stop demanding perfection from yourself, you start allowing yourself to live. And living, truly living, includes making mistakes, stumbling, trying again. Your best phase will not be perfect. It will be real. And that alone is liberating. But be careful. On this path, you will be tempted to go back. Your old love, your old habits, your old comfort zone, all of this can suddenly seem more attractive. Not because it has improved, but because the new is still scary. It's as if your soul is saying, I know it hurts, but at least I know how to deal with this pain. And that's when you need to remember, the pain that awaits you if you go back is a familiar pain, but it is sterile. A pain of moving forward is fertile. It is the pain of growth. You will also notice that you start to lose people. And this loss at first hurts like mourning. But soon you will understand, these are not losses. They are liberations. You are not losing people. You are losing versions of yourself that needed them. And that, as lonely as it may seem, is an unmistakable sign of evolution. And then a new feeling emerges. Still timid, but powerful, gratitude. Gratitude for having had the courage, for listening to yourself, for not ignoring the call of your soul. Life begins to give back to you in subtle ways. Coincidences, encounters, ideas that didn't come before, a sense of peace that no longer depends on external factors. It's as if you've crossed a dense forest, and upon reaching the other side, you realize that something in you has been left behind, but also that something new has been born. This something new is the beginning, not of superficial happiness, but of a life with meaning. And this meaning is not found outside. It is born from the encounter between your desire and your courage. Perhaps now, after so many internal ruptures, you are quieter, more observant, less anxious to respond to messages, more inclined to listen to your breathing. This silence, which once caused you anguish, now begins to feel like a relief, because finally you no longer need to explain yourself, or justify yourself, or chase after things. You have begun to leave the game. Yes, the game, the one society teaches us from an early age, to be enough, to be admired, to be useful, to be desired, but never, ever, just to be. And that is the paradox. Only when you give up trying to prove your worth do you begin to truly inhabit it. Your best phase begins when you stop seeking value outside yourself and start recognizing it within. But look, this recognition doesn't come from the mind. It comes from the soul, from the body, from a sense of wholeness that arises when you respect your limits, honor your history, forgive your flaws. When you look in the mirror, not to see if you're presentable, but to recognize yourself. And for the first time, you don't feel ashamed. This is where many people get emotional, because for the first time, they feel whole. And this wholeness has nothing to do with being healed, happy, or resolved. It has to do with being present, with no longer abandoning yourself, with knowing that, no matter what happens, you are on your side. And that changes everything. You begin to realize that you don't need so much anymore, that you don't need the approval of others, absolute control of the future, or 1,000 distractions to feel alive. You begin to desire quality, not quantity, depth, not appearance, truth, not comfort. This is where your intuition flourishes. That quiet knowledge that has always been within you, but was drowned out by the noise of self-sabotage. You begin to feel what is right before you understand it, to refuse before you know why, to accept what you once rejected, and to reject what you once tolerated, because now you listen to yourself, and you trust yourself. But be careful. This new stage brings new challenges. The world is still used to the old you, and it will try many times to bring you back. Old loves reappear. Seductive proposals, old roles you played with mastery. And all of this comes with a testing energy, to see if you still fit there, if you still accept what no longer represents you. And here, you need to be firm, because this is when many people back down. They return to old relationships, old jobs, old pains, and they convince themselves that maybe they weren't ready, but the truth is that they were. They just didn't sustain the new long enough for it to become comfortable. It takes time. It takes consistency. It takes courage to sustain the new self that is being born, because in the beginning, it is still fragile. It's like a muscle being used for the first time. It will hurt. It will fail. It will seem like it won't work. But if you persevere, it will grow stronger. And over time, you look back and barely recognize who you were. And that is one of the most profound beauties of the psyche. It is changeable. It can rebuild itself, as long as you feed it with truth, with presence, with care, with what it never had, and always needed: awareness. You. See, there is no good phase without awareness. What is not seen repeats itself. What is not understood becomes a symptom. What is not healed is passed on. And that is why your best phase requires a radical commitment to the truth, your truth, not the one others expect, but the one you feel when you close your eyes. This truth is sometimes uncomfortable. It reveals that you no longer love the person you said you loved, that you want to change careers, that you have a desire you never dared to confess, that you need more silence, less exposure, more freedom, or more structure. And accepting this requires maturity. It requires you to accept that you will disappoint people, that you will give up certain validations, that you will dismantle the characters that have kept you acceptable. But this is the only way to truly live. Anything else is just surviving. You weren't born to survive. You were born to expand, to occupy your body, your time, your destiny. And your best phase is when you stop outsourcing that. When you take charge of your story. When you understand that pain was the soil, but flowering depends on your choice. And make no mistake, no one will come to rescue you. Because the rescue you expect from others is actually an invitation to reconnect with yourself. The wounds you wanted someone else to heal are wounds that call you inward. They say, "Come, listen to me, understand me." And it is in this gesture of listening to yourself with presence that everything begins to change. You begin to feel peace for no reason, to smile inside, to notice beauty in the details, not because everything is perfect, but because you are whole, because you are no longer trying to change the world to feel safe. You are changing yourself to inhabit the world with authenticity. And when that happens, things change around you. Not because you manipulated the outside world, but because your inner vibration aligned with who you are, and the universe responds, not in a magical way, but symbolically, as if to say, now you're ready. You started this journey believing that the best phase of life would be a destination, an achievement, a scenario where everything would finally be right: work, love, health, peace. But now you know and feel that this phase doesn't start outside. It starts inside. It starts when you stop running, when you face yourself, when you finally understand the symptom was a cry for truth. You see, everything you denied about yourself turned into repetition, into sabotage, into pain. And now that you are beginning to see yourself, without masks, without escape, without idealizations, the repetition ceases. Not because everything has been resolved, but because you have integrated yourself. You have accepted your desire. You have embraced your shadows. You have honored your history. And that, my friend, is the deepest form of freedom. There is no liberation without awareness. And there is no awareness without pain. That is why the best phase of your life will never be the easiest. It will be the most honest, the most profound, and most yours. It is the one in which you no longer need to betray yourself to be loved, in which you no longer need to hide to be accepted, in which you can simply be. And here, something extraordinary happens. When you start to be truly yourself, the world reorganizes itself. Relationships align. Time seems to cooperate. You attract what resonates with your frequency. And what no longer fits goes away. No drama, no implosion. It goes because it no longer belongs to the narrative you have chosen to live. But that doesn't mean there's no pain. It means there's meaning. Pain with meaning doesn't make you sick. It transforms you. And that's what your life begins to become. A series of meaningful transformations. You learn to trust the cycles. You learn to welcome endings. You learn that everything that ends is just the beginning of another layer of yourself that's ready. To be born, and this confidence is not blind faith. It is a quiet certainty. It is a wisdom of the body. It is the ancestral knowledge that you have survived everything so far, and that you no longer need to survive. You can finally live. Best phase of your life won't feel like a movie. It will feel like a breath of fresh air. There will be days of boredom, doubt, monotony. But above all, there will be consistency. There will be connection. There will be truth. There will be you whole, looking in the mirror and saying, I am here with everything I am. And that is enough. This phase will not be marked by big events, but by small choices. Choosing to sleep peacefully instead of pleasing someone else. Choosing to say no, even when you're trembling. Choosing silence instead of performance. Choosing solitude instead of shallow relationships. Choosing to lose people so you don't lose yourself. And when you do that, day after day, something sprouts. A quiet self-esteem, a respect for yourself that doesn't need to be shouted. A love that is born from inner companionship. No longer the love that begs to be chosen, but the love that has already chosen itself. That is already enough. That, in being enough, can share without dependence. And that's when relationships change. You stop wanting to be loved and start loving, not out of need, but out of abundance. And paradoxically, this makes you more desirable, because the world listens, even if unconsciously, to the frequency of those who love themselves. The best phase of your life is when you no longer need to prove anything. No more fighting for belonging. No more competing for attention. No more wearing suffocating outfits just to fit in at parties where you've never been seen before. It's the phase when you learn to leave, to withdraw, to say, this isn't for me anymore, without guilt, without resentment, with gratitude, because even the places that hurt you are important. They taught you what you no longer want. They showed you what kind of pain you are no longer willing to accept. And that is emotional wisdom, knowing where not to return. And so you walk on, light, not because you carry nothing, but because you only carry what is yours. You begin to build a life that does not need to be photographed to be felt. A life that may seem simple on the outside, but on the inside is rich in presence, connection, wholeness. And one day, almost without realizing it, you find yourself smiling because you are alone, or crying and yet feeling safe, or just existing, without anxiety to change, conquer, accelerate. And you understand, you have arrived, not at a place, but at yourself. This is your best phase. The one where the past has been understood, the future doesn't scare you, and the present is enough. The one where you don't seek escape, but presence. Where spirituality is not a dogma, but a state. Where peace is not the absence of conflict, but harmony with your center. And if you feel you are arriving at this place, celebrate, silently, if you want. But celebrate, because you have walked within yourself. You have faced ghosts. You have touched traumas. You have broken packs of silence. You have dismantled masks that seemed like skin. And yet, or perhaps because of this, you are here. Alive. True. Whole. And now that you've come this far, I ask you, share your journey, not as a lesson, but as a presence. Because the world needs more people who live from the soul, who look into the eyes with truth, who listen with their bodies, who love responsibly. Your best phase is not an end. It's a beginning. The beginning of a life that is born when you choose radically to be who you are. And if this journey spoke to you, if it touched a part of you that was forgotten, then leave a comment below about what you realized. What part of you is being reborn? What layer is being healed? What pain is setting you free? Don't be afraid to show yourself. Because when you show your soul, you allow others to recognize themselves as well. Now, take a deep breath. Touch your chest and say to yourself, I choose myself. Starting today, I choose myself. And with that, you are already living. Your best phase. Thank you for going through this analysis with me. If you felt something true here, subscribe, share, and keep diving. The unconscious still has a lot to reveal to you.